paper jam with Rialina.
Morning. Morning. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Oh, I haven't plugged my microphone in. We're using the wrong microphone. Gosh, I was all ready. I was sitting here. I was ready. Let's see. Can you still hear me? Did that mess anything up? Tell me if you can still hear me and see me. And I know I'm not wearing a hat. But I figured we can do it without the top of my head. Who needs the top of my head? But if not, I have a hat. I have a hat if necessary. Good morning, Ian. Good to have you. Hello, James. James, tell me how your gong went. Was that this week that you did it? Good morning, Mike. Some equestrian duties in Kent countryside, reducing live Oh, well, Mike, I want to come and help with equestrian duties one day. Does that involve like petting the horses, feeding them carrots? I want to do equestrian duties. I love that. I like horses. I like big animals. Generally. Do you know what? I mean, don't get me wrong. Love all animals. They're all wonderful. Nature's amazing. But sometimes, think about what we have in the UK. In the UK, when we drive around, we'll see some robins. We might see a fox. We'll definitely see mice. And, it's all very cute on a Christmas card. But when you drive around, like South Africa, you can be driving around and just be like, oh, that's a giraffe. That's literally a giraffe by the side of the road. Or, oh, a herd of zebra have just run by you, or fields of baboons. I want to drive by fields of baboons. I'm tired of cows and sheep, and they're very pretty and the rest of it. But do you know what? We don't eat baboons. I'm tired of driving by my food. I want to drive by something I wouldn't eat. I love big animals. It's like living, like when I was in South Africa, it was like living in a zoo. It was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. Malcolm, thank you for confirming that everything is good. Sound fine, sync okay. That is great. James says no hat. Well, I was like, it's so hot. I don't want to wear it, but it does take out the top of my head. So, I mean, I do have the hat. Just I don't want to. Is it weird? Should I just do the entire show like this? I'm just going to think the whole time like this. Just be really thoughtful the whole time. No. James says, so James, as you know, is becoming a comic, and he's doing open mic nights and stuff. And he did a massive gong with Russell Kane. Is that right? Was it with Russell Kane? And you said you were the first victim. Oh, crud, James, I'm so sorry. First victim, only 3 got through from 12. That's about right. You can't have too many go through. And there were only 12 of you. All right, fair enough. So 25% got through. Wasn't the worst. Russell Kane was great. Russell Kane is great. Was he nice, though? You know me as a gong meister. When I host a gong show, brutal. I was thinking of setting one up somewhere that isn't in London. Let me know if you want a gong show near you. Jared and Karen, good morning. Lovely to have you. Oh, Karen's not here. She's working for the LTA today. Oh, as a tournament referee in Bromley. Not quite Wimbledon, but still just as impressive. Oh, that's nice. Okay, Shane says, morning. Yes to all. Fantastic. Shane got chased by a pack of hyenas on safari in Kenya back in the day? What did you do? Why did they chase you? Were they laughing as they did it? So many questions. Hat on you looks... I know the hat looks... Thank you. I know I look great in a hat. I'm so hot. I also put on a light blue t-shirt. That also did not work. Like, it just took my entire t-shirt out. I had quite the morning. Yeah, there's no actual material in Paper Jam today. I was too busy putting on the wrong clothes and testing out the wrong stuff. I could put this on instead. Is it really distracting? Is the top of my head really distracting? I'd be good at the Rip and Yarm show. Well, Thanks, James. Send them my name. I'd be happy to do it. It would be fun. So, yeah, and the ranger was late getting you back to your campsite. Okay, so basically you were out too late and the hyenas said, look, after 9 o'clock, whatever's out in the plains is fair game for us to eat for dinner. And that was on the ranger. Fair enough. So, today, I have something I want to talk to you about. And it's ironic that I'm going to be doing this online through a live stream, through a number of platforms that are... Well, you'll see in a second. Oh, by the way, any news this week that you noticed, I think it was it Jared that sent me the picture of the oozing arch from Trump's 4th of July. So if you don't know this, Trump set up, he set up a fairground kind of thing to celebrate the 4th of July in Washington. And of course, again, he's like, it's going to be a big party. Everybody's going to come. It's going to be amazing. All of that crap. But the arch was oozing something. I don't know. I'm assuming it was some kind of it looked like it should have been the stuff that we spray into our lofts for insulation. You know how you spray it and it kind of expands and it looks like meringue. It was kind of like that, but it was gloopy and it was disgusting. Basically, the whole thing, as per usual, was a scam. So that was a fun story. 2 people climbed the Empire State Building, and then at the top, one of them proposed to the other, and they got engaged, and that, of course, wreaked havoc across New York because I found this really funny in the article. They said they had neither safeguarding equipment or permission. Like, those two are equal. Like, they're equal things. Like, how dare you? How dare you almost die? And how dare you not ask me first and say please? But yeah, they made it down again, and now they're getting married. Oh, Jared, you sent the podcast link to Jonathan Pye. Yes, I think Tom and Jeff are going to be doing that for 5 weeks. So I think that's just a thing the 2 of them are doing for 5 weeks. But it's great, isn't it? I love them both. I love both of them. Dessert gravy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Was it you, Mike, that sent it to me? Anyway. Oh, yes, the Filipino tennis lady got it to the floor. Yes, that also happened. Philippines are doing quite well. In fact, the women's Filipino football team are the first team from the Philippines to even make it to the World Cup. So they're going to be playing next year in the Women's World Cup. You know what? Fuck this. World Cup is men's and women's World Cup. They're making it to the World Cup. I'm calling it the World Cup. You either call it the men's World Cup and the women's World Cup, or they're both the World Cup as far as I'm concerned. Because let's be honest, next year when we're watching, we're not going to go, are you watching the Women's World Cup? You're going to say, you watching the World Cup. And I just think we need to normalize that. Anything else major happened? This is the thing. Anything else major happened this week? My phone blew up with, I've got all my notifications set, and obviously I keep an eye on things throughout the week, and I'm making notes and what are we going to talk about today? What do I want to research? What I'm going to present to you? And all it would tell me all week was Harry's coming without Meghan and the kids. And I think it's because, of course, we did the King's taxes last week. So my phone was like, oh, you like the royal family? I shall tell you everything about the royal family. And Harry's coming over for an anniversary of Invictus Games, but Meghan and the children are not coming. Of course, it came down to a security issue and who's going to pay and is he going to have security? And it's this weird thing where he believes that he deserves security. And I don't deny that. But here's the thing that we don't think about as mere mortals, as mere citizens, as mere subjects, is who pays for security. And it's not that, we don't think twice when we see J-Lo out and she's got a minder, a couple of bodyguards and everything else. We go, of course J-Lo needs security. She's otherwise she'd be mobbed. She'd be mobbed by fans or, anything else. And then, of course, we also never think twice when we see that Harry or William or Andrew, we all have seen a police escort and we know what that looks like. And it's quite subtle. In fact, the King popped into my neighborhood a couple weeks ago. The King popped to the new Guinness thing, which, anyway, there's a massive Guinness thing Well, actually, it's down the road. It's in Covent Garden. It's down the road in Covent Garden. But anyway, so there's this Covent Garden. They're ruining Covent Garden. Anyway, Covent Garden used to be in the 70s, as you probably know, it was a market. Well, up until the 90s, but so therefore very much in the 70s and 80s. It was a marketplace. We all know it from My Fair Lady, and it was where you would, where restaurants and it was where you went and bought your fruit and veg en masse, right? And they then built a massive market out in Vauxhall, I think, and they moved all of those vendors there. So now if you want to shop for your restaurant, you don't go to Covent Garden, you go all the way out to Vauxhall, and you go at 4 or 5 in the morning, you get the best fish and the meat and everything else, right? And then that meant that they could turn Covent Garden Market into a more upmarket, bougie, destination venue, and you've got all of your street performers there now that, and it's become a bit of a tourist destination. But for years, the rest of the shops were just a lot of independent shops, vintage and just little shops that people would come to that kind of served the feel of the place. And then you would have Soho. Soho, of course, we had all of our postcards in phone booths of the women that might be upstairs, and it had I don't want to say a seediness to it because I think that's unfair, but Soho had its own culture, its own community. There's a lot of social housing in Soho. There's a little primary school that's been in Soho for well over 100 years that is connected to the church. There's two in Covent Garden, one which is Christian, one which is Catholic. Then you've got Leicester Square. So you've got all of these areas that up until recently were places of the people. If you read Jane Austen or if you read a Charles Dickens novel, Seven Dials was known as the Lanes. If you read Bleak House, at one point, one of the characters goes to visit a moneylender in the lanes in Covent Garden and at some point gets lost in the lanes. The lanes is Seven Dials. This was where, if you read Jane Austen, this is where men would come to Longacre to look at horses and to buy a new carriage or to buy, this was very much working class shopping area. And now they've tried to make it, they've outpriced themselves in the market. So if you walk around Covent Garden, there are more empty shop fronts than there are full shop fronts. Or you'll go, oh, that's now a this. And then 6 months later, that shop is gone again because no one can afford the ground rent because it isn't Knightsbridge. Covent Garden is not Knightsbridge. The most successful shop on Longacre, which is the high street, which is the shopping street of Covent Garden, for years was Next. That's the level of shopper. Now, they've gone up a slight level. Now, the most successful shop that hasn't left on Longacre is TK Maxx. So again, to give you an idea of the type of people who shop here, so many big brands would come in, Swarovski and Jack Wills, and they would go, this is our flagship. And I'd be like, well, as long as you think flagship means loss leader, then by all means go for it. And they all disappear again because you cannot make the money in Covent Garden those brand levels that people think that the landowner or CBRE, the people who run the ground and rent it out, think that they should be making. It's just an absolute travesty. So they have rebuilt. They had an H&M which they had an H&M which they kicked out, and they turned the H&M into a Guinness brewery tourist tour attraction, right? So you can go around and see how things are brewed. Obviously, they don't actually brew Guinness because you're not allowed to brew that outside of Ireland, but you can see how beer is brewed. And then across the road, they have a big bar and restaurant complex, and there's like an event space where you can rent it to have, I don't know, your award ceremonies or something. If you're I don't know who would use it, but they've got an event space. I went and looked at it. I've toured the whole place and had a look. They're like, oh, do you want to do shows here or something? It's like, not really. But, it's there's no character to it. It's all brand new, straight angles, which is great, lovely. Love a corner with a 90-degree corner, but that's part of the charm of Soho, Covent Garden, Leicester Square. Part of the charm is that all the buildings are slightly wonky. Part of the charm is that this place has been around for hundreds of years with a community. I know someone who works in Covent Garden and born and bred in Covent Garden. Their mother went to the primary school, I think the Catholic one, and their kids went to the Catholic primary school. That's 3 generations of people who went. And of course, the school's been here since I don't know when. I mean, it's the school's been there for I don't want to put a century on it, but definitely since before the 1900s. There's community here, and they stick this big friggin' Guinness tourist attraction, and I just thought, oh my God, that's just going to invite stag do's and all kinds of things to the area. And then of course they have a branded merch shop. So much like the M&M store, or, people are going to be walking around with Guinness branded merch, hats and shirts and towels and all the rest of it. Anyway, long story short, I was walking through there, I think probably on the way to Top Secret, which is on Drury Lane on the other side of Covent Garden. And there was the king. It was just a couple of cars, one before, one after the car that he would obviously be in. And the king had just popped in for a Guinness. But it's a very discreet, police presence. So there was a car in front, a car behind, a couple of walking policemen, just kind of keeping an eye on things and just making sure all was okay. It was very, very low key. But we pay for that, is my point. We, as the public, pay when the king goes to do a job. So that was him working. That wasn't him on his own going, you know what, I fancy a Guinness. Let's go to Covent Garden. That was him doing a job, and he probably cut a ribbon or shook some hands or whatever he did. Did you ever stop to think that maybe he's got sausage hands because of how many people squeeze his hand all the time? Can you imagine? They don't squeeze hands. They don't actually. He mustn't. I mean, if I was the queen didn't shake hands, did she? Well, she always wore gloves. Very clever. She wore gloves. I guess he can't really wear gloves, so he has to just press flesh all the time. Do you know what? I have a little bit more sympathy for his fingers, if that be true. But my point being that we pay for any of that. But Harry, when he comes over, wants the public purse to pay for his security. He argues that as a public figure, he needs security. And I would say, yeah, probably. I think probably Harry needs a bit of security. But Meghan refuses to come over without the level of police security that she thinks that as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex they deserve. And of course, the argument, and this is one of the reasons they left, the argument is if you're no longer with the firm, i.e. if you were and remember we talked about this last week, we talked about official business versus private business, they no longer work officially for the firm, which means that when they show up to places, that's not, even if it does help the economy, even if they do suddenly go, you know what, let's pop to Harrods on a shopping trip. Even if suddenly we make £1 million more as a country because they pop to Harrods and then a whole bunch of other people pop to Harrods and spend money in our economy, it's not official. It's not official firm business. Therefore, we, the taxpayer, shouldn't have to pay for that security. The same way that when J-Lo goes to Harrods, we, the taxpayer, do not pay for her security because that is J-Lo living her life, doing her own thing. That's her own official business. She pays for her own bodyguard. And for some reason, Harry and Meghan have a real issue with paying for their own security. And that's always caused a fuss. So this week, Harry's going to come by himself, which I think is a real shame because it means both of those kids are not going to get to know their grandparents, their family, grandparent, if you want to be technical, but the king hasn't seen those kids for 4 years, since they were small. Like, they don't know they don't know their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, or any of that on Harry's side. And I think it's a real shame. And I am not a fan of her. I'm going to say I'm not a fan of her. And it's like that was such a big thing when they were in the news all the time as to whether or not you could be a fan of Meghan. And if you weren't a fan of Meghan, you were racist. Oh, you were racist. The way that the royal family treated her was appalling. Yeah, it was. Nobody looked good when that happened. The way that Meghan was treated was appalling, but that doesn't mean that she was completely innocent in all of this. The way that she came over, totally misunderstood how the royal family works, had expectations that just were never going to be met by an establishment that is centuries old. Centuries old. It was here before you, love, and it'll be here after you, whether we agree with it or not. In some way, shape, or form, the monarchy or that family will still have a lot of land, a lot of money, and a lot of power, even if we shut the firm down. And she didn't get that. And I know that she went for him. I know that she came over here looking for a rich aristocratic husband. She hit pay dirt. She hit the most eligible bachelor that was left after William got married. And I don't think he's happy. I don't think he loves her. I think that she brings out the worst in him. There, I said it. Come at me. Come at me, internet. But you know what? As a woman of color, I am not being racist. I see you for who you are. It's not about the color of your face, Meghan. It's about the color of your heart. Yeah. Let's see what you all have to feel. Let's see what you say. Flower Market. Flower Market's still there. Elton's minions raid it daily. Adam Handling's chocolate shop is in Maiden Lane. That's right. And I believe doing quite well. Maiden Lane is quite a cute little cobblestone road at the bottom of the piazza. It's got a few nice things on there. Shane says, I saw Neil Malarkey and Eddie Izzard doing improv on the cobbles back in the day. Never happened now as pitch rent is also mahusive. Well, they don't have to rent the pitches. They have to sign up for the pitches. And the way to sign up for pitches is to show up at 9 o'clock in the morning. But of course, you don't want the 10 a.m. slot. You want like the 2 p.m. slot when people are out and walking about. Or if it's raining, you want to hope you're going to try and guess when it will or won't rain, that kind of thing. So the pitches, and it's very tightly regulated. There's licensing. If you're going to perform an instrument, you have to be licensed. I think actually you have to be licensed even if you just want to be a statue. You know, the people that just stand still. There was a period of time where everyone was a statue. I used to take my kids down there. It was free entertainment. So we would go over to the piazza and show them different performances. But yeah, Eddie Izzard started as a street performer. So did Mark Rothman, who now hosts at Top Secret and owns Top Secret. So he quite cleverly, I think, realized that he couldn't street perform forever. He had the most fantastic street show. He would juggle chainsaws on top of a structure balanced on a pipe that was then a skateboard on top of it. It was incredible. But I think he got to a certain point where he went, I maybe need to get an inside job because I can't do this outside forever. And he moved indoors and created Top Secret, which of course is incredibly successful. Stuart Goldsmith is another comic that started as a street performer and then moved to the stage. So it's a great training ground for it's a great training ground for how to play a crowd and how to keep a crowd. You know, can't deny that. James says the Guinness place looks so out of place. I just find it so commercially garish. I think that's the word. It's garish. Why do we have that there? But I suppose, do you know what? I probably feel the same way. I think name any brand and put it there. I don't know why I was fine with H&M. H&M was still, it's 4 stories tall, and the H&M shop, and you go, it's H&M, but I guess, why is it fine for a shop to be that big, but Guinness not to be? But at the same time, you go, Guinness is a drink. The bar and what they've done in a courtyard on the other side, fine. You want to have a bar, you want to have some restaurants, an event space, I get that. But 4 stories of pseudo brewery, come for a brewery tour, and people do it as well. I was on a WhatsApp group of artists, and one of them said, I have a spare brewery tour ticket. I was like, why? Why did you do that? But you know what? Also, I don't drink, so maybe that's part of it. I have absolutely no interest. Maybe if it was a Coca-Cola tour place, I think I'd probably sneak around it. I'd probably go once because I am deathly curious as to how they make it. If only to try and make it at home, save myself some money. Okay. Jared said, in the words of Joni Mitchell, they paved paradise and put up a Guinness merch shop there. They paved paradise and put up a Guinness merch shop. Nice. Nice ref. Hi, Karis. Lovely to have you. I think it's a shame Harry's children won't ever get to know their grandfather, regardless of the financial ramifications of security payments. Yeah, I agree. But also, I'm going to be honest, I think the king could be putting more effort in. I think that's the other problem with being surrounded by this massive machine, is that Charles could do something about it. Charles could definitely reach out, meet in the middle. They could arrange to go on a holiday. But even things like he had a dinner with the core group of the family. He's arranged a dinner before. I'm not sure if Harry's here right now. I've lost track of the timeline. But basically, we know that he had a dinner with the core of the family. And it is, they think it's definitely because they would have discussed the ramifications of Harry visiting and how that was going to stir up turmoil and how they weren't looking forward to it. And I'm just like, oh my God, you are no better. You are no better than trailer trash when you do stuff like that. Like, you know what smart, intelligent, real family members do that really love each other? They rise above that. They go, how can we see these kids? How can we make sure these kids see their family, know their history? How can we spend time together? I can't disagree with the fact that Harry should not be having publicly funded security. But then, do you know what, Charles? If you're going to pay for your fucking brother to live in his fucking peppercorn rent house or whatever, if you're going to pay for him and his friggin' security, then you could pay out of your own pocket. Now that we know exactly how much you make, well, we guesstimate, but you had enough to give 12 million back, didn't you, in tax? Pay for Harry's security. Pay for his family to come over. Like, don't be such a don't have a dinner with everyone else to discuss how you're going to get through what might be a little period of bad PR. I mean, come on. Enough people hate you already. Why are you worrying? Just, makes me angry. And Shane says, maybe Harry should get into crypto. 5 million security donations alleged. You know what, Shane? It's not a bad shout. How many crypto billionaires do you know, Harry? If you're watching, maybe you're just looking in the wrong place for some of your support. If you could just go whip out that old Halloween costume that you had. I'm sure you have it still. You know, the one with the armband, the one that didn't go over so well. Whip that out. You will get so much donation, so much money in order to pay for your own security. I mean, what a great idea. I think we just solved the problem. But anyway, listen, this is what I wanted to talk to you about today. I wanted to talk to you about something called digital sovereignty. And it's something that I'm morbidly fascinated by, and I am very much torn myself into what I'm going to do about this. Part of me, if I'm honest with you, part of me feels like if the UK government isn't going to do it, why should I? But I recognize that for my own peace of mind and for my own integrity, that really I need to be looking at this. Now, what is digital sovereignty? Now, I want you to think about just sitting here. What are you watching me on? You're probably watching me on a computer or a phone, right? You're watching me on a computer or a phone, which means that you are probably on one of two things. You're either on an Apple or you're on something that runs Microsoft operating system, which means that you are, like myself, completely tied into American technology. And digital sovereignty is the idea that countries should not be using other countries' technology to house their data, to run their government systems, or anything else like that. And the reason that I think that this is such an important story is this week there's a number of court cases. There's a guy called Schrems, which is a great name. Schrems. Let me get you his first name. He's an Austrian lawyer. Max Schrems is an Austrian lawyer and privacy activist who since 2013 has basically been taking the EU to court over and over and over again to improve the privacy legislation that between the EU and the US, because the US will make a decision or the US will make legislation, and then the EU's legislation, as he keeps proving in court, is found to be wanting. Now, the reason this has come up recently is because I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Supreme Court in the US has allowed Trump to replace, at his whim, or has allowed Trump basically to replace at his whim let me just find it, to replace the heads of independent bodies in the U.S., making them no longer independent. I'm sorry, I have so many notes on this. Apologies. Hang on one sec. So it's the FTC shockwave, as we're calling it. So the Supreme Court decided that the President of the United States can dismiss independent agency heads without cause. And he immediately, after they allowed him to do that, fired the Federal Trade Commission Commissioner, Rebecca Slaughter, and actually Alvaro Bedoya. All right. So, and replaced them with his own cronies, which means that the FTC is now no longer independent. Now, what is the FTC? Well, the FTC under this DPF agreement, now the DPF is an agreement with the EU, the FTC was designated as the primary independent commercial enforcement body, ensuring that U.S. firms protect European data. Because as you know, here I say here in the EU, in the EU, which we are still protected from, they have something called GDPR, which is this huge bit of legislation that they brought in, which is to protect our data, which is why now you can't just take someone's email address and mail them out on your mailing list. You got to get 2 forms of, yes, I'm okay being on your mailing list. It's why we can't just share phone numbers without checking. Like, it means that your data is yours to protect. And if you hold other people's data, then you have a legal responsibility to make sure that it is safe. But that conflicts so often with American legislation. And the complicated factor underneath it all is the fact that we're all working on American tech. I have an iPhone. I have a MacBook. We're talking through YouTube. All of this is controlled by America and to a certain extent American legislation. So on the 30th of June, of this year, Max Schrems' organization formally notified the European Commission that because the U.S. executive can now instantly reshape and influence the FTC, it fails the independent and effective supervision standard, which is required by GDPR. So he's going to go back through the courts again and see and challenge whether or not our privacy laws actually cover our privacy. I'm going to say our for the sake of it, even though no, we're not technically in the EU, but it's something that I hope that the UK is going to pay attention to because this is so important. Now, Schrems has done this before. In 2015, there was an EU-US safe harbor agreement, and he got that struck down by the European Courts of Justice. Safe harbor was, get this, a self-certification scheme allowing U.S. companies to claim their data practices were adequate under EU law. Anyway, no, that ain't a thing. This whole marking your own homework shit that happens all over the place, not a thing. He got that struck down. In 2020, he then went back to court to challenge the EU-US Privacy Shield laws. That was the replacement for safe harbor. The court eventually found that U.S. surveillance law does not provide essentially equivalent protection to GDPR, meaning Europeans' data on U.S. systems has no equivalent legal protection once it crosses the Atlantic. Again, a problem. And part of the reason that this data might be crossing the Atlantic is because if you are working with a cloud system, say you're storing your files on G Drive as a part of your Gmail email account, you don't actually know where that's being stored. Now, obviously, ideally, if you are a European using your Gmail in Europe, then your data is being stored on a European server and is therefore protected by GDPR. And therefore, you then trust that the American tech company Gmail, Google, is protecting your data in accordance with local GDPR law. However, Schrems keeps going back to court and proving that actually these agreements, these EU-US agreements, aren't fit for purpose. And now that the FTC its independence has been taken away by the Supreme Court, now we have a new problem, and that now we are again not protected. Why does this matter? Well, there's something called the U.S. Cloud Act, okay? Now, the Cloud Act is something that's been in place since 2018, and the Cloud Act says that if the American government asks you, an American company, for data stored on any of your servers anywhere in the world, you have to comply without having to inform the data owner that you're doing that. How could this work or be a nightmare in principle? Well, for example, if you are, say, I don't know, the British government, and you're using, I don't know, say Microsoft to do all of your work, all of your government work, which of course is going to have levels of secrecy and levels of confidentiality according to security measures. And the U.S. government goes to Microsoft and says, hey, we need everything on that server that's sitting right next door to Westminster. Yeah, that one. The one that's at the bottom of Big Ben. Yeah, we need all the data off that server. Then Microsoft has to make a choice between complying with the Cloud Act, as they've been required to do by this order from the government. It's basically a warrant. And then breaking basically European GDPR law, or not complying with it and getting in trouble in the States. So it's creating a real kind of tricky place for American companies to be. But if you were an American company and the government served you a warrant, and you knew that you didn't even have to tell the UK government that you were handing their data over to the American government, which would you choose? Would you choose, I don't want to get in trouble. The U.S. is asking me for this, and I get in trouble if I don't give it to them, and I don't have to tell them? Or do you go, oh, yeah, but then I'm breaking the law in Europe, even though I don't have to tell them that I'm breaking the law in Europe? Of course, they're going to give it every single time. So we've got this huge, huge issue. I mean, and I know we're just individual citizens, and we're teeny-tiny in the big scheme of things, but this does technically affect us in terms of our data could go with it. Let's say for whatever reason, Gmail's like, well, Ria's in Soho, we'll just store her data over in the Westminster server as well, because that's nearby. Then my data goes too, without me ever knowing and without me having any say in it. So this is something that it actually really makes me angry. And it ties into, as you will have been reading in recent months, it ties into the whole Palantir thing. Because as you know, Palantir has a number of massive contracts across the NHS in the UK. It holds a separate £330 million contract for the NHS Federated Data Platform, which, by the way, it won without any competition. So that wasn't put out to tender. It was just handed straight to Palantir. It's causing huge backlash right now. So I don't know if I'm relieved to say, but I do know that the MPs are looking into this again and going, you know what we need? And if you can believe this, they don't currently have like break clauses in those contracts that allow the UK government to take the contract back and go, thank you so much for the last year. No, it was great. No, we loved your AI. We loved your servers, but we're going in a different direction. Bye. We don't actually have that firmly in place. But there are many, many MPs saying to government, you should put this in place for Feb 27. There's been a few rebellions against it. Let me just be clear. They have the 330 million NHS healthcare contract. They have a 240.6 million defense enterprise agreement, which they just went into in December. There is some involvement in law enforcement and policing, and let me see. I think they also have, let me just check my notes. While the Mayor of London's office blocked a separate £50 million automated intelligence contract in 2026 over procurement rules, the Met Police still uses Palantir tools to flag officer misconduct. So they're in there. They're in the FCA. They signed an initial agreement with the Financial Conduct Authority to deploy data sorting software aimed at tracking rule breakers across 42,000 regulated financial firms. And they're in civil infrastructure and environment. They holds minor data processing pipelines within national highways and the Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs. Okay, so Palantir is just insidiously making its way into all of our infrastructure. And remember that Palantir, like every other American company, is also going to be subject to the Cloud Act. So once they're in all of these places, all that the government has to do, all of the U.S. government has to do is serve a warrant to Palantir for all of that data, and suddenly all of it's over there. And that's not, and already we already know. We already know that we are giving them our data. We know that they're taking it through a back door. Whether we've officially agreed to it or not, we know that that's probably in the contract, that they've gone, listen, anonymize your NHS data, but let us play with it. Let us play with it. Let us use it. Let us sell it. Let us, and that's our data. That is our data that's going on. There's been some pushback. There is some parliamentary scrutiny. They're launching an official review of the 7-year FDP contract under immense pressure, as I said, to activate a Feb 27 break clause. There's been a lot of boycotts. The BMA have basically instructed doctors to limit engagement with the FDP over privacy concerns. So there's been a lot of pushback, but it's still there, and it's there in so many places and in so many ways where people are going, well, they're not providing 100% of our infrastructure, but we're just using this one tool here, or we're just using that one little thing there. And it is scary and yet astounding that the British government are allowing this to happen, and yet at the same time completely unsurprising. We already know, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, and it was something that wasn't admitted on mainstream media for a very long time, and I heard it and I saw it and I read it in a couple of places, but it isn't everywhere. When Mandelson went to New York with Keir Starmer, he walked him into a meeting at Palantir's headquarters that was then not minuted, even though it was an official visit. And that was I was like, Keir Starmer, I already didn't like you, but you're dead to me after that. You genuinely, it wasn't minuted, it wasn't noted, nobody knows what was said in that meeting, and yet suddenly £330 million uncontested contract. And I mean, we will talk about Andy Burnham when he comes in, but I don't have high hopes. I just don't have high hopes that he's going to be any different. He's going to be Keir Starmer with a northern accent. That's what we're going to get, but we'll see. Let's see what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts on all of this? All right, Karis is on a tablet. All right, so you're possibly using Android? Great. Oh, Andy Taylor, I knew you come in. Or Android, Google. Is Android Google now? Android was independent. Android used to be open source, and it used to be the alternative to all of the, when we first got phones, you could have a Microsoft phone. I had a Microsoft phone once. I remember that. That was a very short-lived period of time in my life, and I'd like to apologize to everybody for that lapse in judgment. I am now very much, I will admit, bought into the Apple system. So I was a programmer for years, building, I can build a computer, I could put it all together, and actually using things like Linux and Unix, which are, if you build your own platform in Linux or Unix, you own that. It's open source. That means that you own that entirely and you control that. And that's important, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But then I moved into Apple, and I'll tell you why I moved into Apple. Number of reasons. First of all, the internet suddenly came alive in my industry, and the need to be able to edit and process video and audio material became paramount. Even just to put clips on YouTube, to put clips on Instagram, all of that. And Apple was way ahead of Microsoft in terms of its software and its ability to do that. Secondly, I moved to Apple because it's a closed economy. It's a closed environment, whereas Microsoft is not. Microsoft is renowned for going, oh, we've got to do an update to whatever your latest version of Windows is, to Windows 2026, but it's not quite ready, but there's loads of bugs in it. We don't have time. We'll just fix them as we go. And they'll do a big core dump, and then they'll let people, as they use it, find out where the bugs and the back doors are. And it just meant that every time you get an update from Microsoft, there were patches. They were just like, oh crap, there's a little backdoor patch. There's a leak patch. And it was very patchy. It meant that a lot of people could write programs for your environment, for Microsoft, that weren't necessarily fully virus or worm checked, so you were at risk. The need for antiviral software is 100. If you have a Microsoft system and you don't have antiviral, what are you doing? You're probably riddled with it, and I moved over to Apple because they control every single app that goes onto the App Store. And then they charge you a third of your profit for they they rinse you. Don't get me wrong. If you create an app and you put it on the Apple App Store and it passes all of the tests, you're not making as much money as if you put it on the Android Google Play Store, whatever it's called. But it's a much more secure environment. There are far fewer, therefore, viruses for the Apple operating system than there are for the iOS, than there are for Windows. And so I moved over for its capabilities in editing. I moved over for the closed environment. And then thirdly, I moved over because I have kids. And one of the things that they do very well, and there is this capability with Android, but like I said, with things like Android phones, you can download almost any app and you don't know what it's going to do on your phone. You don't know if it's safe. You kind of have to go with word of mouth, or you have to go and look at all of the reviews and everything else. And when I had kids, so I wanted to be able to control every single aspect of their phones, and you can do that incredibly easily on Apple. It's one of the things I would recommend it for, is the fact that if you give your kid an Apple phone, I can shut it down. I can, from my phone, shut all of my son's apps off. If I can just be like, right, that's it. Your phone's a brick. You can call me, and that is it. That is all you can do on your phone. You can call, you can text me, and you can check the time. Have fun with that. And there were times when he was younger where I'm like, look, it's after 10. You can play on your chess app, and that is it. Chess or nothing. And so I moved over, but I'm not blind or ignoring the fact that I'm very well aware that therefore any picture that I take, for example, because you're automatic, you're given, I think, 5 gigabytes of free cloud storage on Apple. That's all cloud. Every time you use a cloud service, like taking your pictures, any files that I have, backing up my WhatsApps, it all backs up into my section or my little corner of the Apple Cloud network. But that means that my data is open to Apple having a read, having a look at my pictures. If that doesn't put you off taking naked photos of yourself, then I don't know what will. Anybody who is there going, oh, it's just us, we'll just take it with our... No. Take it with a camera, put it on an SD card, but don't take it on your phone. And definitely don't send anything over WhatsApp. One of the things I learned in computing forensics is how, people don't realize this, is how many versions of one photo there are once you take that. So if I take a photo on my phone, it's on my phone, it's in my cloud. If I send it to my mom on WhatsApp, then it's going to be on her phone. It's going to be on her cloud. It's going to be on WhatsApp server. It's going to be on the app. It just propagates. Once a photo lives now, it lives forever. It'll be possible to find a version of every single picture ever taken digitally forever. I fully believe that. And it's something that we don't fully understand. This is why people don't get that if you're in a WhatsApp group and somebody shares something that is illegal, you are now in breach of the law, even though you did not take that photo, even though you did not send it. And even, if it lives on your phone, if it lives in that group and you haven't deleted it or reported it, then you are now party to that crime. And actually WhatsApp groups are a very helpful way of investigating crime. And this is one of the other debacles is, WhatsApp claims to be encrypted end to end. However, Apple have recently, because the British government have also come in and said, Apple, you have to allow us we have to be able to get into people's clouds if we need to. And so again, now, if you are on an Apple phone, if you're on an Apple computer, you are no longer encrypted. Sorry, I don't want you to conflate WhatsApp. WhatsApp is Meta and Apple is Apple. And WhatsApp now claims to be, just to be clear, encrypted end to end. And now no one can read your conversations unless they have your passcode, et cetera, et cetera. However, if you, for example, back up your WhatsApp to your Apple cloud, Apple is no longer encrypted from government eye. And so there are still ways of getting into those conversations. So you need to be very, very clear if anyone communicates with you anything that they shouldn't have done. Get rid of it, delete it, report it, make a note of that. Because if it is later found that you were in a group, so that's the other thing about WhatsApps is that if you're in a group that lives, let's say you're in a group with 100 people, anything you say will live 100 times. You deleting it off your phone and going, oh, I got rid of my end of the conversation, doesn't get rid of it on their end of the conversation. And that's how so many people are later caught, especially when it comes to image propagation of illegal imagery. Let's go. Let's see. Andy says, it was always Google, based on open source as Mac OS. Yes, but Mac, even though it's based on open source. Oh, Andy, so good to have you here. By the way, everybody say hello to Andy. He is a new paper jammer. It's great to have him. Andy, though, and I first met, I'll just say, Andy and I first met at the Distraction Club, which was a musical comedy club. If you didn't know this, I started as a musical comic. And Andy has found his way to my Patreon. It's great to have him. He's going to be our tech expert in all sorts of ways. You used to work, actually, Andy, I came and took my kids to visit you at, is it the Computer History Museum? Is that what it's called? The Computer History Museum? And Andy very kindly gave my son his first computer, which he then built into, he took the base that you gave him, Andy, and then he built it into a bigger computer, and he used to edit for YouTubers and everything else. Later to find out that a lot of the people he edited for had to shut down because they were not good people in the end, unfortunately. But my son was always fine. And so my son learned how to build computers through Andy. So thank you for that. Thanks for coming. So, yep, Microsoft is hated. Shane says Microsoft is hated in the pharma industry for its bugs and lacks security. Oh, yeah, no, it's awful. I don't miss it. I'll be honest with you. I don't miss it. I don't miss the updates. My mother is still on Microsoft, and she'll still sometimes come to me. Now, she was also in computing, so don't get me wrong. She's very tech competent, but she'll still come to me sometimes and go, oh, I have this issue. And I'll be like, I'm out. I don't do Microsoft anymore. I don't remember. And I believe that there came a point when Windows got rid of the command line, because a lot of the ways that I would work around what was happening in Microsoft Windows was through the command line prompt. I basically go straight to source. And there came a point where you weren't able to run programs as easily that way. Like, it stopped being a real tunnel into your computer, is the best way I can think of saying it. And it started to become just a program that mimicked it. So you could run certain programs within that environment, but it was a program mimicking a tunnel instead of an actual tunnel, is the best way I could put it. Andy says, in your opinion, Apple is the least evil company of all the tech giants, plus the displays are the best. Yeah, I know. That's the thing. So to me, Apple is a little bit like IKEA. Like, I know that these big companies, big, huge companies generally are evil. If you get to that size, you've done something evil to get to that size. However, I agree with you. Apple has been really careful to keep its security clean. And yes, you don't make as much money. If you make a product and you put it on the App Store, it's not, you're going to, like, for example, oh, by the way, if you pay for my Patreon through your Apple Store, go on to, I don't mind if you quit and then rejoin through your computer, because App Store adds money, and it takes huge chunks of money as well. It like takes commission and everything else. Like, in that way, it is evil. But in exchange, it gives you, like you said, great displays. When you buy a MacBook, you spend 2 to 3 times as much as you would on your basic PC or your PC laptop, any of your Dells or your Asus's or anything that runs Microsoft. You spend 3 times as much, but it lasts 3 times as long. So it really is good value for money. And I do very much appreciate a lot. There's so much functionality that in our lifetimes, I will never be able to use all of the functionality of Apple. So yeah, I have to say, as a tech consumer, it's great. But the American government is fucking with that. It is fucking with that. Kevin, chess or nothing. Yes, actually, all of my kids, so I took them all to chess club when they were younger. Now, chess club was a nightmare. It was very loud. Chess club shouldn't be loud. And I had 3, as it turns out, very neurodiverse children who just went, no. But they all still play chess. It's one of the things they do, and I'm so proud. I'm so proud. Andy says, a genuine Genius Bar appointment I had was, how do I stop my photos appearing on my son's iPod Touch? Yeah, that's a problem. I had a problem with that as well, is where some of my photos appeared. They've sorted that out now, but there was a point where, because if you have a shared family account network on Apple, some of the photos were leaking through. Yeah, Andy, I've had that problem too. No longer, but I did, and I feel your pain. Andy says, I miss DC. Oh, I'm sorry. The National Museum of Computing at Bletchley Park, I believe it's still there. I very much enjoyed it. If you're a geek like me, I highly recommend the National Museum of Computing at Bletchley Park. It is fabulous. And Andy also says, the scientists who work on DNA sequencing had massive problems with MS Excel incorrectly auto-formatting the data as a date. See, these are fun tips and tricks. That doesn't surprise me. MS Excel, Microsoft Excel also caused problems during the pandemic, if you didn't know that, because Public Health England would use Microsoft Excel to store all of its data about the pandemic. And as we know, that was a horrendous tragedy where far too many people died. But they ran out of lines because they were using such an old version of Excel that they got to a point where they're like, where's the rest of the spreadsheet? Oh no, you need to upgrade your software to be able to use more Excel than you're currently using. And Andy says the fix was to change their whole methodology of sequencing DNA. This is almost a whole other paper jam in itself. But to just get back to what I'm talking about. So what is the solution to get around all of these issues with digital sovereignty? Well, and this is what's happening in Europe, governments are changing. So France is the one that's made a big push on this. This was back in April. On the 8th of April, France's Interministerial Digital Directorate ordered every government ministry to stop using American software and formally migrate approximately 2.5 million civil servant workstations from Windows to Linux. Every ministry must submit a detailed transition plan by autumn 2026, after which phased implementation begins. So by this time next year, pretty much all of France will no longer be reliant, and I mean French government and infrastructure will no longer be reliant on American technology. Now, this is huge, but I am so proud of the French for doing this. This is such a good idea. Already from 2008, the French gendarmerie, the police, have operated Genbuntu, which is their own build that they've been doing. By June 2024, it ran on 100,000 workstations, which is 97% of their computing estate, saving, and this is the other great thing about this, saving approximately 2 million euros in licensing costs and reducing total cost of ownership by an estimated 40%. So if we were to do this in the UK, would it cause a bit of a headache in the short term? Yes, it would. But in the long term, would this be a way that we could save some money and stop bitching on and on and on about the welfare bill? Yes, it could. Do you know how much money we pay? I mean, here, I'll give you a quick rundown. We pay $330 million to Palantir alone just to use their software in our NHS. Whereas if we built our own, then we wouldn't have to pay those same licensing fees. And this is what I'm going to be very passionate about this every time it comes up. Digital sovereignty. We need to move away from reliance on American technology, especially cloud sources. In fact, I'm saving up. It's going to cost a lot of money because right now, because of AI, hard drives are very expensive and hard to come by. But I've already bought a server casing. And in fact, Andy knows this because I had chats with him. I was like, Andy, I need to buy a server. I'm building my own server so that I can come off. I've already come off of Dropbox. I've already come off of an old cloud that I was using with Sony that I'd been given in 2005. It took me months to transfer all of the data off there. I had 2 terabytes on there. I now store it locally, but I'm going to have my own server. But really think hard about where your data is stored, because anyone can get to it now. And by anyone, I mean the Americans. And I know, why would Trump care about my cloud service data, but my cloud data? But the fact is that the more that we rely on them, the more power they have over us as a country. We can talk about, reform can sit there and bitch about how immigrants are coming in and ruining this country and British things for British people. But we're owned by the Americans right now. We are no longer British. We are no longer autonomous. Digital sovereignty. This is where we could be making some real change. We're going to finish off today's episode with a dad joke, very kindly provided by Kevin and James. Let's see what we go. Kevin says, oh, wait, going back. Sorry. Shane says, the first rule of chess club is protect your pawn. Don't make a rookie mistake. It'll be a nightmare. Boom. Shane. Thumbs up. Kevin then says, the first rule of chess club is that people go through the door in grading order. Strongest first. Ooh, that reeks of elitism, doesn't it, Kev? James says, I worked in a factory making chess pieces. I was on night shift. Ding, ding, shh. Kevin groans. It's tough enough being a chess player without the dad jokes. But what a great way to finish. Folks, thanks so much for coming to this week's episode of Paper Jam. Andy, great to have you. Karis, always lovely when you can make it. And of course, to everybody else, love that. I'm going to send out, I'm thinking second or third weekend in July for an Ask Me Anything. Remember, that is open to our top tier of editor's choice, but you are always welcome to buy a ticket and come to that, which is just a chat over Zoom where it's literally an Ask Me Anything. We always have a lovely chat and a cup of tea, and I look forward to them very much. So I will send out a poll for that for dates. And other than that, have a great week. I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.
Paper Jam with Rialina.